I asked my coworker, Nolan Price, to pretend we were having an affair in front of my husband during game night. Graham and I had been married for 8 years, and I had decided his calm trust meant he no longer cared whether anyone else wanted me. I did not ask for reassurance. I asked another man to make my husband wonder what had already happened between us, then built a scene inside our home. I kept waiting for Graham to compete. The question I should have feared was what he would do when he refused. Graham and I hosted game night on the first Friday of every month. He chose the game, I handled food, and the blue spindleback chair nearest the kitchen was always his. It was one of the few routines that belonged entirely to us. Nolan worked 2 desks away from me. He was outgoing, and there was nothing romantic between us. And it made him feel safe to use. 3 days before game night, I asked him to stay behind after our project meeting. I told him Graham had become too comfortable. I said I wanted to wake him up by making it look as if something had started between us at work. All Nolan had to do was give me extra attention, use one of our private office jokes, and take Graham's usual chair at the table. Nolan stared at me for a second and laughed. "You want your husband to think we are sleeping together?" he asked. "Not believe it completely," I said. "Just wonder." That distinction sounded intelligent to me at the time. It was neither intelligent nor true. I said on that Friday, our friends Tessa and Owen were opening wine while Graham arranged ticket to ride in Europe. From his blue chair, he could reach the score pad and refill bowls without making everyone move. When Nolan arrived, I took his coat and walked him straight to that chair. "You'll want this spot," I said. "Best view of the board." After he sat, I stood behind him and draped one arm across his shoulders while pointing at the board. Nolan and I had never touched that way at work. I chose the pose because it looked practiced. Graham came in carrying a bowl of pretzels. His eyes moved from Nolan to me and then to the chair. Tessa noticed too. "Isn't that Graham's command center?" I could have ended it there. I could have laughed, moved Nolan, and let the evening become ordinary again. Instead, I looked at Graham and waited for him to reclaim his place. Graham set down the bowl. "He's already comfortable," he said. "I'll take the end." He brought in the straight wooden chair from the writing desk and placed it at the narrow end of the table. He did not glare at Nolan. He did not tell me to move. He simply made room for the situation I had created. I treated that calm response as permission to keep going. During the first round, Nolan asked me for help choosing a route even though Graham had just explained the rules to everyone. When I leaned over the board, Nolan said I was using my hotel voice and office joke about the overly cheerful tone I used with a difficult client. I laughed much harder than the joke deserved. Nolan kept his attention fixed on me. He asked what I thought of every move. When Owen offered him a beer, Nolan looked at me and said, "Let's smart having." As if my drink should decide his. None of it was intimate. That was how I kept excusing it. But it was deliberate, and Graham could see that. So could everyone else. After the third time Nolan used the hotel joke, Graham placed 2 blue train pieces on the board and looked at me. "Do you want me to deal you into the next round?" he asked. "Or are you and Nolan playing your own game?" His voice stayed level. Owen studied his cards. Tessa reached for her glass without drinking. Nolan finally looked embarrassed. I smiled and said, "Relax. We work together." "This is how we joke." Graham nodded once. "I see how you joke." He finished the game. He explained the scoring question to Nolan, cleared empty plates, and congratulated Tessa when she won. He refused to give me the confrontation I had planned to convert into proof that he cared. Our guests left earlier than usual. Tessa hugged me quickly. Nolan stood on the porch struggling with one sleeve of his coat and said he would see me Monday. Graham locked the door behind him, carried the glasses into the kitchen, and started the dishwasher. I followed him, already preparing my defense. That got a little awkward, I said. Nolan overcommitted to the bet. Graham dried his hands. What bet? I told him it was harmless. I said that I had mentioned that he never got jealous, and Nolan thought it would be funny to make the office friendship look suspicious. I changed my own plan into Nolan's spontaneous joke while the words were leaving my mouth. Graham did not argue. He walked past me into our bedroom. He unplugged his phone charger from the outlet beside our bed. Then he picked up his paperback, his glasses case, and the ceramic cup he kept on his nightstand. He carried them down the hall and placed them in the guest room. He returned for his pillow. I stood in the bedroom doorway, watching him strip his ordinary life from one side of our room. "You're seriously moving over a joke?" I asked. He tucked the pillow under his arm. "I'm moving because my wife invited a man into our house and coached him to make me think she might already be sleeping with him." I didn't coach him. Graham looked at me then. He was not angry in the way I had wanted him to be. He looked tired and certain. He took my chair before he knew where the bathroom was. "Mara." I had no answer for that. "This isn't punishment," Graham said. "I need one room in this house where I'm not being tested." He went into the guest room and closed the door without slamming it. His response did not come out of nowhere. I had spent years turning his trust into something defective. Graham worked for the city parks department, coordinating maintenance crews. His phone stayed quiet after dinner. Mine did not. I managed commercial renovation projects, so clients and coworkers texted me about delayed fixtures, revised drawings, and things that supposedly could not wait until morning. Graham never asked to inspect those messages. He never acted suspicious when a man from work called. If I had dinner with a project team, he told me to have fun and left the porch light on. At first, that trust made me feel safe. Then I started comparing it to louder relationships. A friend would complain that her boyfriend demanded updates all night, and some ugly part of me heard evidence that he could not bear to lose her. Graham kissed me goodbye, remembered how I took my coffee and trusted me to come home. I turned all of that into indifference because none of it looked like panic. The next morning, I woke to the coffee grinder and felt relieved. Graham was making coffee. Our routine had survived. When I reached the kitchen, one travel mug sat beside the machine. Graham filled it, rinsed the filter basket, and left for the parks depot. My yellow mug remained on its hook. That single missing cup frightened me more than shouting would have. I made my own coffee and sat in the blue chair Nolan had used. It felt like evidence, even though there was nothing to investigate. I had arranged every part of what happened. For the next week, Graham remained polite. We coordinated groceries, utility bills, and whose turn it was to put the trash out. He did not freeze me out or make cutting remarks. He simply stopped offering the small acts that had blurred our days together. He no longer called from the store to ask if I wanted anything. He cooked enough dinner for himself and labeled the leftovers before putting them away. On Sunday morning, he went to the farmer's market without waking me. That had been our routine since we bought the house. I kept telling myself he was stretching the situation to make a point. On the fourth night, I stood outside the guest room while he folded work shirts. "Can we admit this has gone far enough?" I asked. Graham laid another shirt in the drawer. "What do you think happened Friday?" I made a stupid joke. "No. You created a situation where I was supposed to feel threatened in front of our friends, and then perform whatever reaction would make you feel wanted. When I didn't perform it, you kept pushing." I said I had never kissed Nolan, and there had been no real affair. Graham did not dispute that. "You keep defending yourself against an affair I never accused you of having," he said. "That's easier than talking about what you actually did." He closed the drawer. The conversation was over because I still wanted the absence of something worse to make my choice acceptable. Tessa called me the next afternoon. I expected sympathy. She and I had been friends since our first office jobs, long before either of us got married. If anyone would understand that I had only wanted a reaction, I thought it would be her. I told her Nolan had taken the joke too far. I said Graham was sleeping in the guest room and acting as though I had humiliated him on purpose. Tessa was quiet for so long that I checked whether the call had dropped. "You did humiliate him on purpose," she said. The certainty in her voice made me angry. I wasn't humiliating him. I wanted him to care. "Mara, you watched Graham's face the entire night. You barely looked at Nolan, unless you were checking whether Graham noticed. You wanted your husband uncomfortable enough to prove something to you in front of us." I reminded her that Nolan and I were only co-workers. "That makes it more planned, not less," she said. "You selected somebody you thought was safe, assigned him a role, and put Graham on stage without telling him." I asked if she was saying Graham should end our marriage over one bad night. "I'm saying I'm not going to help you call it harmless." After we hung up, I sat at the dining table and looked at the score sheet Graham had left under the game box. His handwriting recorded everyone's points in neat columns. He had kept score through the entire evening while I turned our friends into an audience. That was when I began remembering the smaller tests. A year earlier, I had mentioned 3 times that a new vendor always complimented my clothes. Graham had said the vendor sounded friendly. I sulked for the rest of the evening because he did not ask whether the man was attractive. Once, after drinks with my team, I stopped sending the message that said I was on my way home. Graham assumed I had become busy and went to bed. I told him the next morning that I could have vanished, and he would not notice. At a neighborhood cookout, I spent half an hour talking to a recently divorced man and accused Graham of ignoring me when he did not interrupt. Graham said he trusted me to end any conversation I did not want to be in. I heard that as laziness. Each test had been small enough for me to dismiss. Each one required Graham to become anxious so I could feel valuable. I had started believing that trust was what remained after desire faded, when trust had actually been the way he loved me. Anxiety felt more romantic because it was louder. Monday morning, Nolan did not stop at my desk. He sent the revised fixture schedule through our project system instead of walking it over. In our team meeting, he took the chair across from me and addressed every question to our director, Jean. I caught him near the break room afterward and said we should clear the air. Nolan glanced down the hallway before answering. I shouldn't have agreed to that. I almost thanked him for admitting this part. Then he continued, "But you told me Graham would laugh." He didn't look like someone hearing a joke. He looked at me like I knew something about his marriage that he didn't. I said there was nothing between us. "I know that," Nolan replied. "He didn't. Not for sure." And I was sitting in his chair helping you make him wonder. He asked that we keep everything strictly professional from then on. No lunches alone, no private jokes, no texts that were not about work. His request was reasonable, but it changed a partnership that had made difficult projects easier. I had used our friendly rapport as a tool, and now he no longer trusted the friendship either. Jean noticed the tension before the end of the week. Nolan and I had been assigned to a riverfront hotel renovation that could have put both of us in front of the company's largest client. Our strained handoffs were already slowing decisions. I could have waited for Nolan to request a change and let him carry the professional cost of something I initiated. Instead, I went to Jean. I told her I had created a personal boundary or problem with no one outside work. I said he had not harassed me or behaved improperly at the office, and I did not want him blamed. Then I asked her to reassign me from the hotel project. Jean closed her office door. What does a personal boundary problem mean? I had hoped the phrase would be enough. It was not. I told her I had asked Nolan to act interested in me in front of Graham, and that the strain between us had started afterward. Did Nolan initiate any part of this? She asked. No. Jane held my gaze for a moment, then looked through the glass wall toward the conference room where Nolan was reviewing drawings alone. So you involved a coworker in a private plan, and now that plan is affecting a client account. Hearing it in her voice made me want to explain that Nolan had agreed. I stopped myself. Yes, he did not ask for gossip after that. She reminded me that the account had been a chance to lead my first full renovation. By stepping away, I would return to smaller maintenance projects for at least the rest of the quarter. I understand, I said. For once, accepting a consequence did not mean arranging for someone to watch me accept it. I did not tell Graham about the reassignment when I got home. It was not a token I could place on the table in exchange for his return. That evening, he sent a short message to our game night group saying we would not be hosting the following month. No explanation. Owen replied with a thumbs up. Tessa offered her house instead. I stared at the message, tempted to post something cheerful so nobody would think our marriage was in trouble. And I put my phone down. My need to control how the room saw us had caused enough damage. A few nights later, I asked Graham if he would sit with me at the dining table. He chose the wooden desk chair, not the blue one, holding the whole plan without reducing it. I had invited Nolan because I wanted jealousy. I had told him which chair to take. I had suggested the inside joke. Nolan had not pursued me, and Graham had done nothing to provoke the test. Then I told him about the other times I had tried to make him chase, interrupt, or worry. I admitted that this time I had deliberately tried to imitate an affair. I did not call any of it a joke. Graham listened with both hands around a glass of water. When I finished, I said, "I'm not asking when you're coming back to our room. I wanted you to have the version that doesn't change to protect me." He looked toward the dark dining room window. "I knew Friday was planned," he said. I didn't know it was a pattern. The truth did not comfort him. It widened the injury exactly as I had feared it would. "I don't know what happens next," Graham said. "I know I can't go back to normal because you finally admitted it." I nodded. An apology could acknowledge the damage. It could not require him to feel safe on my schedule. 6 weeks have passed. Graham still sleeps in the guest room. We share some dinners now, but not every night. We speak about more than bills, though there are subjects he approaches carefully, as if testing the floor before putting his weight on it. He has not agreed to host game night again. The ticket to ride box sits on the top shelf of the hall closet. Nolan and I communicate through scheduled meetings and project notes. The easy jokes are gone. Another coordinator leads the hotel renovation. When its progress photos appeared in the company newsletter, I closed the email and returned to a lighting replacement schedule that once would have felt beneath me. I used to think accountability was the speech that made another person understand your regret. Now I think it is what you continue doing when regret earns you nothing to meeting it. Every night, Graham fills his ceramic cup at the kitchen sink and carries it down the hall with his book and glasses. Sometimes we say goodnight. Sometimes he is already behind the guest room door when I turn off the kitchen light. The blue chair remains at the table. Graham does not sit there anymore, and neither do I. In the morning, I make 1 cup of coffee and leave his yellow mug on its hook. Then I hear the guest room door open, and we begin another ordinary day in the marriage I tried to test and have not yet repaired.